Good evening, ladies. My name is Brianna Standifer, and I am the founder of Mom Dreams. If this is your first time hearing me, seeing me, this is just an introduction to our book club. So we voted on a book a couple weeks ago to start our book club, and this book will last 6 to 7 weeks, depending on how quickly we decide that we're going to read. I have it planned out, but we may find that some chapters are less meaty than others, and that's totally fine. But what we will do is on Tuesdays, we will meet 6 p.m. on Tuesday evenings. We're going to talk about what we read, give our personal insight, give our personal experience, and just learn from one another. It's so important that I think we connect with one another. We all think differently. Our experiences are different. And so I think when we come together and read the same thing, our interpretation is going to be totally different. So, for those of you who do not know, the book that was chosen was, I won't say it, Forget Happiness, How Women Are Ditching the Cult of Positivity and Choosing Radical Joy by Ariel Gore. I will say that I made a choice to not read ahead because when we discuss, I want it to be authentic and I don't want to necessarily know what's coming up. I don't discourage you from doing that, but I will be reading as we go so that I don't get ahead. So, one thing you will learn about me is that I love to read. And so I typically run through books pretty quickly, but I think slowing down, making sure I don't get ahead of everyone else, and also being intentional about what I'm reading and how I'm going to apply it. And if I don't agree with what she's saying, or if I'm being challenged in some areas to apply it, I can do that and have a week to read and apply so that we have things to discuss. So, for the first section that we covered, it was just the introduction, and it talked about the history of women and happiness. And the section that we focused on was the truth we are trying not to know. And so the author just lays a foundation. She has a background in psychology. So she has experience in emotional, mental health, things of that nature. And so it interested her to write this book because she found that most of the studies in psychology, most of the things that are out are mainly from the point of view of men, and she is a white author, and she says white men. So a lot of the studies that she found, a lot of the interviews were from the perception of something that they can't relate to us fully. So when they give their perception, it's from a male's perspective. And so she wanted to dig a little deeper to find out, how do we become happy? It's a big industry. We have books, we have influencers, we have quotes, we have journals. There are psychologists that write books, and they feel that it is a scientific thing that can be done, that can be approached to be happy and also produce happy children. But many times, those things were not from the perspective of other people that we can connect with. So I found that it was very, very interesting. I didn't necessarily agree with everything that she said, but I will say some of the things that she said challenged me and kind of made me kind of look at myself. So I'll go into a little more detail about some areas that spoke to me the most. And when we come back together, when I post this, feel free to give your comments if you're reading along. Tell me what you think about what you read, or also about what I share. So one of the main things that she starts with is, what is your definition of happiness? And I will tell you, for me, I could not fully define it for myself. I know things that make me happy. Like, I love to read, I like to write, I like to spend time with family. But in a, I guess when you're in a place of happiness, what does that mean? And so it's so funny because as I continue to read, um, I guess it began to formulate. And I feel like the example that she gave at the end of the chapter more related to what I believe happiness is. So I'll talk about what things make me happy, but I'll dive more into the definition of happiness when I dive into that third question that I posted in the group. So the things that make me happy, I like peace. I don't like a lot of confusion. I don't like a lot of arguing. I like unity. We can disagree. We don't have to always agree, and we can what we usually say, agree to disagree, but in a way where we can come to an understanding. I can tell you a lot of the arguments my husband and I had in the beginning of our marriage was because we were trying to make the other person think like us, see it like us, agree with us. And we may have been in the double digits when we finally came to an understanding that because our backgrounds are so different, because we were raised differently, because we see things completely different, and because our minds process information differently, how do we come to a place of agreement and understanding without trying to make the person agree with me? So I think that if we talk about relationally in a marriage, I am more happy because we have come to that place where we can have a discussion about things that we don't come to agreement about, but we have an understanding in some type of way. We find a way to meet in the middle. Also, things that make me happy. I love to travel, to experience new things. I like to experience new places, new foods. They don't have to be exotic. They don't have to be out of the country. And honestly, they can be local. But I enjoy experiencing new things. And I know that in my lifetime, I will never be able to experience everything, because I am literally one person. But I want to experience as many new things as I can. And so once she starts talking about the definition of happiness and how she even had trouble defining it because it was defined a lot of by her roles, what she did. She was a mother, she was a student, she was in psychology, she was a doctor, she was all of those things. And that was kind of how she began defining her happiness. And what I think we don't understand is happiness is something that we have to define internally. It does not come from things that are external. Hello, whoever just joined. Thank you for joining. Hi, Priscilla. How are you today?
Hey, I'm
Good to
getting
see
you.
you. I'm good. So right now I'm just like laying the foundation for where the book started. And right now we were talking about what the definition of happiness is and how many times we have trouble defining what that is. And feel free to hop in, give your comments at any point in time. It doesn't have to just be me talking. I am more than happy for you to give your input as you have things to say. And so she had trouble defining it. It was very much defined by her roles, what she did. And so that's another reason why she was so interested in diving a little deeper into studying this. Another question she that came from this thought was, what are some things you thought would make you happy and they did not? And I can tell you, I have a list of things that I could talk about that I thought as I transition in life, they would make me happy. Like when I first started this current job that I have, I've been there for 7 years. And when I started, I did not enjoy it. I found things that I enjoyed, but I did not enjoy it. And one of the things that I thought was, okay, maybe if I move up, if I get promotions, that'll make me happier because at least I'm seeing some movement in an area of my life. I can tell you, I got 3 promotions since I've been there in 7 years, and none of those things made me happy. Yes, I got a little more money, I got a little more responsibility, but they did not bring happiness. Other things, when I started a family, and we had a small apartment, and we rented a home for a little while, and we were like, yeah, we need more space. We kind of want to get more established. Let's do the things we need to do to purchase a home. We bought our first home. That did not make me happy. It gave me more responsibility. It required more of us, but it did not inherently make me happy. And I think what I learned just from living, from therapy that I've gone through, and also just life experiences many times Anything external may make you feel good in a moment, but it's typically temporary. It does not produce long-term happiness. Now, what you receive from those things may bring fulfillment. You may enjoy it, but happiness is actually something that comes from the inside. And so when we transition into that third statement that she asked, which I'm going to probably spend the majority of the time, unless someone has input, was, do you have a sense of peace in your heart, a feeling of security about your future, and a feeling of anticipation when you wake up in the morning? And I think for me, when I read that, I thought to myself, that is happiness to me. If I can wake up, I know every day it won't be like this, but if I can wake up with a sense of peace in my heart, a feeling of security about my future, and the feeling of anticipation when I wake up in the morning, that is true happiness. And I guess the question would be, why is that? And so I'll kind of break down that question, a sense of peace. And so one of the things she talks about was that happiness is not necessarily absent of fear, absent of sadness, or absence of sorrow. It is finding joy in those small things and reminding yourself honestly of how blessed you are. So that sense of peace is not because everything is fine or there is no chaos or there aren't things going wrong. It's that centered place where okay, I know this bad thing that's happening is very temporary. This thing that's impacting me, that someone else made the decision and it's negatively impacting me. What can I do to bring myself peace? Because I understand that I can only control me, how I respond, and my decisions. A sense of peace in, I'm a believer, so I find peace in worship and I find peace in prayer. I know that's not everybody's go-to, but for me, being centered and finding that place where I can look around, even in some chaotic moments, and find the areas where I can be settled and be like, I know it's going to be taken care of. This is not what I expected. I can look at my life and think of several things that are not what I expected them to be, but that sense of peace is knowing that everything's going to be fine and it's going to work out. That feeling of security, I think that is a big one, because security can cover so many different things. Security can be financial security, security can be emotional or mental security. So when you say feeling of security about your future, I know many times we think about financial security, but there are other areas that we need of security so that we can continue to grow and move forward. And so financial security, yes, is very, very important. But I think as women, we have to learn how to identify the other areas that we need beyond money so that we can be balanced and so that we can have stability. I know for me, when I started therapy, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. Finances were not an issue. We were pretty established. We weren't rich or anything, but we were doing good. We were fine. But I was looking around and I could not understand why everything external was fine, but I was not fulfilled. I was unhappy. And it is no one's responsibility for me to make me happy but me. Yes, other people's decisions impact how I feel, how I deal, but at the end of the day, I am responsible for my own happiness. And so when I decided to go to therapy, she's the one that told me that. And one of the things that she told me was, I understand that you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. That was usually my crisis. Like, what am I doing in my life? I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. I have a good husband. I have beautiful kids and they're smart, and I have family, and I have a home, and all the things that, check off the boxes that everyone said we should have, we should get. It's going to make us feel complete. And all of those things were external. And one of the things that she said to me was, we're going to figure out what you want to do with your life, your purpose, where your gift should be used, because that was a big thing for me. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Yes, I work, but what am I supposed to be doing with my life? What is my purpose? But one of the things that she told me was, we're going to get to that, but let's deal with why you're so sad. And I was like, I'm not sad. What are you talking about, lady? I'm fine. This is she's a therapist, licensed, does this for a living, been doing this for over 20 years. She's a mother, she was a wife, she's had multiple, careers, and this is what she knew her purpose was. And I was like, I'm not sad. And then I was like, am I sad? I really had to ask myself that question. And she was like, well, let's talk about what sadness is. And so she kind of started going into detail about what it was. And I was like, oh, shoot, I am sad. And it made me do the work, that feeling of security. I was not feeling secure, but why wasn't I feeling secure? I was not feeling secure because I had a lot of imbalances in my life that had nothing to do with my husband, my kids. I'm not saying that they had not hurt me in some area. I'm not saying that they were perfect, but a lot of the things that I was dealing with were internal things, things I brought into the marriage and the family, and things I carried in because I didn't go through the healing process before I got married, and I didn't do the digging and the work before. I know some people do, and some people don't realize they need to. I was one of those people was like, I know I'm not perfect, but I think I'm all right. I'm working through it. I can admit when I'm wrong. I do conflict resolution pretty well. Don't lose my temper, all the things that we think check off the boxes. But I did not have a feeling of security, not because of anything external. It was all internal. And I think once I was able to acknowledge that I was unhappy, I was unfulfilled, and I did not have feelings of security, not because of anything external, not because of anything my husband did or my kids did, but because of the things that I needed to resolve within myself. And it's interesting because as I worked through those things, that's when I felt a little more secure about my future. I didn't know what I would be doing. I still didn't really know what my purpose was. I know I was good at a lot of things, but I was the master of absolutely nothing. But as I started working through whatever those things were that made me sad, the disappointment, looking at my life and it not looking the way I thought it would, thought I would be further along, not just career wise, but emotionally, mentally. Like, why am I still dealing with the same thing, going around the same bush? I am tired of dealing with the same stuff. I thought I already dealt with this. And so as I start dealing with those internal things, that's when I felt more secure about I felt like I had a future. So I think those situations create hope once you begin to work through those internal things. And ultimately, what led to that was me being more happy. The process was not fun, but working through those things led to happiness, which led also to me looking more deeply about what I wanted my future to look like. Because again, nobody can create that but me. And it's this last part, a feeling of anticipation when you wake up in the morning. If I'm honest, I do not consistently feel that way. Consistently in the morning when I wake up, I'm like, here we go again. I'm about to get on this. I'm going to take my kids to school. They're going to talk me to death all the way there with my daughter. And then I'm going to come back home and I'm going to work. And they're going to ask me questions all day. And it's going to be kind of stressful and annoying. And that's how my day is going to look. On the weekends, it's a lot more fun. But I don't typically wake up with feelings of anticipation in the morning, which means I don't really have expectation for my day. That means I'm expecting my day to look exactly how it looked yesterday. And not only that, I am the only one that can make it look any different than how it looks. Like nobody else is in charge of that but me. So I think that part of the question probably stuck with me all week because the question to myself is, how do I get to a place where I am anticipating the day, where I am looking forward to not necessarily the mundane things that I have to do, but how do I get to a place where I have expectation that something amazing or unexpected is going to happen? Or how do I get to a place where I try to create something new every day so that they don't look the same. And that can be something very, very small. It doesn't have to be big. But I think that is part of the challenge. So, one of the things that the author talked about was a joy journal. So, writing down the things that bring you joy, the things that naturally bring you happiness. And I will be honest and say that was hard for me. Not that I could not find things to have joy about, but I will tell you, I've always been an avid journaler, but it is so much easier to journal about bad things that are happening, frustrating things, hard things. Like we can really get into it and you write down how you feel and write down what you think about people. It's so much easier to do that than journal about things that bring you joy. So out of this, I guess about 7 days, I did 3 days, and that was a struggle. But what I found was it was the simple things, I guess a collaboration of the simple things that made me happy when I paid attention to them, which let me know on those days where I'm not feeling it or I'm frustrated or I'm tired, it's hard for me to find joy in those days because I'm not paying attention. I'm not being intentional about finding moments. Whole day is very rarely joyful. There are going to be things that happen that frustrate you and make you angry and kids are getting on your nerves and whatever the case may be. However, I think when we pay attention to it, so when we're intentional with her saying, write a joy journal, write down things throughout the day that bring you joy. It was on my mind to do it because it was a challenge that she kind of threw in there that she tried. And I was like, well, let me try it because I'm not good at it. It's easier for me to find the negative than it is for me to find the positive. And I think that is normal for people. So on the 17th, so that was last week, one of the things I wrote down was reading in the morning in my pillow corner. So I have a space that's just mine and I enjoy reading, but I don't read as much as I used to. And it's not necessarily that I don't have time because I make time for what I want to. I think it's not as much as a priority, but in doing this book club and getting in the flow and the rhythm of doing this again, I really enjoyed just sitting. It was quiet, everyone was still asleep, and just reading. And that same day, we met with some couple friends of ours. It was convenient. It was around the corner at a restaurant. We didn't have to drive far. We didn't have to get super spruced up. It was on a Thursday, but we had a good time. We didn't talk about work. We didn't talk about kids. We just hung out and we ate. And it was busy in there, surprising on a Thursday. So to kind of hear the hustle and bustle and the dishes clanking and conversation and all that, that was nice. The next day, which was the 18th, because we see 2 consecutive days because it was on my mind because I skipped some days. Putting together the Mom Dreams gift box. So once a month we choose a mom dreamer and we give her a take care package. And so it's catered specifically to the person, to the woman. And so this one was kind of dear to my heart. And so putting it together and writing her personal note, that gave me joy because I knew, number one, she wasn't expecting it. And when she received it, I knew she was going to be grateful and that it was going to meet a need. So that brought me joy. And then after I finished all that, it was early in the morning, just sitting and listening to the silence because it was quiet. I like quiet. And the fan was buzzing in the background, and it was peaceful. And so that brought me joy to sit in a state of peace, knowing that maybe in an hour everybody's going to be up, the house is going to be moving, and everyone's going to be getting ready for their day. So I skipped some days, and on 420, good on 420, I wrote sleeping into the sound of the rain. The window was open and there was a breeze, and then trying something new. I tried something new on that day and I enjoyed it. So, one of my challenges to you ladies is for the next week. If you can do it every day, so be it, but don't beat yourself up if you cannot. But my challenge for you is to write down what brings you joy, even if it's small. So, be intentional about those things. And my challenge to myself is to do it every day, even if it's one thing that brought you joy in that day. If it's someone, gave me a hug, someone smiled at me and it was warm and inviting, someone, sent me a text and it was so encouraging. I hadn't heard from them in a long time. It's no matter how small it is, if it made you feel joy in the moment, write those things down. So I wrote 2 per day. Honestly, I'm not going to put a minimum or a maximum on it because I think it's just about being intentional in our mind and our thoughts about focusing on the positive because there is so much negative that we can focus on at our homes, externally in the world, wherever we are. It is so easy to focus on the negative. So I think being intentional about what brings you joy and writing those things down, because when we write them down they become real. They go from kind of an idea to something tangible in a way where you can go back and read it. So one of the things I know I was talking about, I used to be an avid journaler, still am, but not as much as I used to. And it would be so funny that because I wrote journal almost every day, and so years would pass and I would be in a space and I would go dig up a journal from a couple years ago. And I would look for the date. If it wasn't exactly on a date around the date I was on, and I would read it. And it was so crazy how reading it, I would either be in a similar space or it will be encouragement for me in that space. And so I believe that when you are intentional about writing your thoughts, making things real, not just in there, oh, I thought about something positive, but writing it down, it makes it so much more tangible and so much more real. It also makes you more intentional. And so when you do start, diving into a negative space, you are more quickly to be like, hey, wait, no, that's not, I don't want to go there. I already know where that's going to take me mentally, emotionally. I want to stay in a positive space. I don't want to ignore how I feel. I have to work through how I feel. However, I know that if I take this deep dive and continue to allow those thoughts to circle and repeat themselves, then I'm going to find myself in a state of sadness or anger or depression. And those things are normal as long as you're passing through them and you're not camping out there. And so that also impacts your state of happiness, your ability to work through where you are, not ignore it, not pretend like it's not there, but also not, build a house there, but working through where you are, how you're feeling. Someone said something, someone did something, someone wounded you in a place that's very familiar or repetitive. How do I transition from this place of anger or hurt or whatever my state is to a place of not positivity, but a place of joy? And I think that's what the author is saying, that we have been conditioned so much to think positive thoughts and do your affirmations. But if it's not really changing your thought process long term and it's not impacting your day to day, then maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a better way to do things. Okay, so I'm going to talk a couple more minutes about some of the things that she said and what my opinions were. And then we'll be done for the evening, and I will see you again next Tuesday. So, some of the things that she said that I thought were interesting, she read a study, and the study said women are both happier and sadder than men. And she didn't say that she agreed or she disagreed. She just said they did not dive into that study at all. So I imagine that she might dive a little more into that. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that women typically have the ability to express their happiness or their sadness in a more healthy way than men. And there is that, I know they call it toxic masculinity. I don't want to give it a name, but it is very difficult for men to express emotion in general, overall. There are some men that are emotionally healthy, but many times men struggle with that. Women as a whole, the majority, we are a lot more expressive. And so we tend to cry a lot faster when we're happier, cry a lot faster when we're sad. We may do it in the private. We may not want anyone to see it, but we tend to express emotion easier than men do. So I don't know if it's that they are happier or sadder, or that they have not learned how to express those emotions. She talks about artificial happiness, which I thought was interesting as well. She's talking about how many times, doctors want to prescribe medication for people that deal with things like depression and things like that. And I am not anti-medicine, because I know some people that deal with mental health where it has helped them and has allowed them to be more productive human beings, but everybody does not require that in order to get where they need to be. And so she talked about how artificial happiness can be one of two things. They can be the people that are taking medicine but are not doing the work, so they're not really improving. That medicine just physically helps them feel better, but they're not learning any tools to help them navigate life and their experiences. And then you have people that are in that space where I'm just going to think positive. I'm not going to worry about anything, but they're really worrying. I'm not going to stress, but they really are stressed. They're saying these things, but what they're saying is actually happening. So how do we get from a place of I'm not going to stress, but I'm actually stressed, to a place of peace where, you know what? It's going to be fine. I'm not going to, and really mean it and believe it. It's going to be fine. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to, I'm going to, we or I, depending on what situation, we're going to figure this out. There is a solution. And I will tell you, in the most tragic situations I have experienced, there is always a solution. It is not always what we want it to be, but there is always a solution. If we can be centered enough to really think and talk and even connect with other people that may have good advice or good insight or experience in these areas, we can find those solutions. Another thing she talked about with women, we are over conditioned to be generous and selfless. I felt this in the core of my being, because many times we saw our mothers and our grandmothers, and we've even done it, give, 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 give. And there's nothing wrong with giving. We naturally have big hearts and we want to give. But we also saw them neglect themselves, which is why many of them burnt out quickly, or a lot of them became angry and bitter, or some of them don't really have a balance in their lives, or their lives were so consumed with their roles, their children, their husbands, that when their kids leave, they have no sense of like, what am I supposed to do now? It's natural as mothers, I believe, from what I've seen, when your children leave, to feel that absence. But there are some women where that absence consumes them because they have no identity outside of their roles. Before you had a husband, before you had children, before you had responsibilities, you were just you. I was Brianna, Priscilla, you were Priscilla, anyone else, you were you before you received any of those roles. And so I think that it's so important that we do not think it's selfish when we take time to remember or remind ourselves of who that person was, and also that we take care of ourselves, not to the extent that we neglect our families or neglect our homes. But if the laundry's dirty for an extra day, it's going to be okay. If the dishes are not clean until tomorrow, we're going to live. But I think sometimes that condition to be generous and selfless, when we do not give to that level that we saw, we interpret that we're being selfish. And I believe there is a balance in everything. And sometimes we go to extremes before we find balance. I can be honest and say, when I went through therapy and she was pushing self-care, and she was like, you are so consumed with your roles and your responsibilities and being perfect that you have literally neglected yourself. So you have to figure out a way to incorporate you in this whole equation, or what's going to happen is you're going to burn out. You're going to continue to deal with depression. You're a high, you're a high achiever, so you're not going to let every ball fall, but the things that matter the most won't be addressed. And honestly, her question to me was, do you want your daughter, your children, to grow up in an environment where they believe this is how it's supposed to be? You know it's not supposed to be this way because you're teaching them better, but you're not doing it yourself. And what better example is to do it yourself? So I will tell you, at first, I did go to the extreme. I did. I did. Self-care. I'd never do this. Been married over 10 years. My kids are older, so I don't have to do as much for them. For a couple months, Lord bless my husband, he had to adjust, understanding that it was temporary. Because for me, it was like, if I don't dive in and start somewhere, I'm going to stay in this rut. but everybody else's needs are going to be met. And eventually I'm just going to burn out. And so I did find balance. And sometimes I still struggle with, we call it self care, but I think it's just incorporating you. Like, what do you love? What makes you happy? That's healthy. Is it going for a walk? Is it going to that workout class? Is it, listening to music? Is it playing music? Is it singing? Maybe going to a karaoke every 2 weeks with just you or you and your friends. Like whatever that means, incorporating something that feeds that part of you that has probably been neglected for a long time. If you have families, or if you have a very demanding career where you have made that your focus, or if you take care of, like you're a caretaker for your parents, anything that is consuming mentally, emotionally, and your time, many times we leave ourselves last. And I will say we don't have to be first, but we have to be a priority because that's what makes us better at whatever roles we have: an employee, an entrepreneur, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a wife, whatever those roles are in your life, incorporating caring for you and what you need, being able to identify what you need. For a long time, I could not identify what I needed. She's like, well, what do you think you need? I don't know. I've spent so much time focusing on the needs of others that I have no idea what I need. If someone gave me a week to say, just take care of everything that you need that's going to prepare you for the next 3 months, I could not tell them the answer at all. And I will tell you, vacations and trips out of town are great, but we don't often get to do that as much as we need to self-care. So how do we incorporate things in our day-to-day that are generous and selfless to us, where we take time for ourselves to say, okay, I need to refill my cup so that I can continue to pour out? Because everyone that has relationships with people, you are pouring out to some capacity. If you have children, you are guiding them, you're teaching them, you're loving on them. If you have a spouse or a significant other, you are supporting them and encouraging them and, helping them build something, whatever that looks like. If you have a job, you're dealing with the people you work with and you're dealing with the people you're serving. You are always pouring out to some capacity. So how do you refill your cup so that you don't wake up feeling exhausted and not anticipating good for the day? So another thing that she said was, I'm not selfish. This is my life. And I felt that too, because many times when we begin to make decisions that better us, it's seen as selfish. Um, I'm grateful that I have a supportive husband. However, there were moments in this process where he was like, wait a minute, this is no, I don't like it. And I had to tell him, I don't like it either. I am figuring it out. And so I need you to give me as much grace and patience as I give you when you're in your transitions, because this is a transition that's going to make me better. I think also when we have a lot of responsibility, not just mothers and wives, just a lot of responsibility, we feel a sense that we have to meet expectations. She talks about that. It's difficult not to do what is expected of you. And I can share honestly and openly that I grew up in an environment where the best was expected. You didn't get a whole lot of recognition for doing well at anything. You can be the best at everything. Good grades, sports. You didn't get a lot of accolades and recognition. That's what was expected. And then as we got older, there were expectations as we got older. Even when we got married, even when we started having children, they had expectations. And I had to get to a place where I said, my number one priority, as I was learning, is my family, my immediate family, my children and my husband. And then somewhere in there, I have to incorporate myself. And I love my family. I love y'all. And I will never take away what you all have done for me. However, I cannot live up to the expectations that you have for me and still be effective with what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm responsible for. So I had to set those boundaries. I will tell you that didn't go very well because I was typically the kid that followed the rules, did what was expected. I saw what happened with my older siblings, and I was like, I'm good. I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to make my parents that mad. I don't want to see my parents that brokenhearted behind something like that. Of course, I made mistakes, and typically my mistakes were really, really, really big ones. I didn't do a whole lot, but when I did something, I swung for the fence. But when I became a little more established, a little more mature, they expected me to continue to be that person. And I will tell you, we are not as close because of my growth. And unfortunately, sometimes that is a sad thing that happens when you begin to grow, and not sitting in a judgmental seat like I'm better or that I know better. No, but when you understand how the decisions you make impact not only yourself, your spouse, the people you're responsible for, and how much more healthy you want them to be as they become adults, and how much healthier you want your grandchildren to be if you have grandchildren. And we talk about generational curses and all those things. When you've seen patterns and you decide, okay, this pattern stops here, many times you will not get a whole lot of support from the people that feel like that pattern is normal. And that's okay. And you learn how to navigate those relationships and navigate your growth and navigate the new person you're becoming. But don't stop becoming that new person because it's needed for yourself and for those who you will impact, not just your families, but for whatever your purpose is. And so I believe through that process, that's why I'm here, because I feel like it's so important as women that we learn to create space, not just for everybody else, but for ourselves, to get our cups filled, to get encouraged, to receive what we need, to receive real support. That when there's no strings attached, like I come here, so you got to come. No, I'm coming, I'm supporting, I'm sending you people, I'm doing all these things because I genuinely know you need it. And I've been in a position where I needed it too. So I will end today's session with this quote because I thought it was really good. It takes bravery to honor our right to make our own decisions. It takes work to uncover buried longings. It's a lot of trouble not to do what's expected of us. And I think that is a quote that kind of summarizes my making up my mind that I'm not going to repeat the same patterns and apologizing to my kids for the patterns I did repeat and getting them help wherever that may need, because I think I think both my kids gonna need, counseling when they become adults, because we're all broken people. But also the work to uncover buried things. The fact that I was sad was buried. My purpose was buried. What I desired, what I truly desired, was buried. What brought fulfillment for me was buried. The things I truly wanted and needed, I had to do something to dig and find and do the work. So all of those things were buried under disappointment and expectations of people and all those things. And then it's a lot of trouble not to do what's expected of us. It is so much easier to just go with those things because we look at it as I'm honoring that person or I respect them. It's easier, but it's not always best. And so you have to look at your life, where you are right now, with full acceptance, with full awareness, mistakes, outcomes, whatever they are, and say, from this day, 4/23, 2024, what am I going to begin to do a little bit different so that I desire and anticipate the day, that I have a sense of peace, and also so that I can create that sense of happiness, even when there is chaos going on, even when there are things that are not exactly the way we want them to. So I hope you feel encouraged today. I hope something I said helped you. And I look forward to us interacting and all the comments that are posted after this. For week 2, we will read to page 53. So we'll read Creating Reality, the first question, and a pretty girl is a girl with a smile on her face. So I think she's going to dive a little bit into her background and how she was raised and what was portrayed as what happiness was. So, Priscilla, do you have anything to say before we go? No? Okay. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful evening and I will talk to you all soon. See you later.